Welcome to another Kame House lobby with the 2MK team. Today we have changes to the game. And with them, new strategies, lost strategies, things that sometimes affect beginners and sometimes don't. We won't necessarily be covering every change. I'm sure if you wanted to find a precise explanation online, you easily could. But we will be looking at it in terms of things that are most likely to change for players who aren't that good yet, depending on what they probably did or did not do. Our primary and most important changes in the matchup you're about to see, probably for a couple times, as I won't be playing right away today, are related to Nappa's recovery from a Cyberman, which has been shortened, and changes to Adult Gohan's standing heavy. Obviously, Cybermen were always an important part of Nappa as a character, and they've been tweaking over time whether or not you can effectively use this in a lot of matches. Hopefully they've gotten a little closer to the right balance now. We've definitely seen Just Fine improve the ability to use these, but we definitely haven't seen Jack-O level of management of Cybermen, which is unlikely no matter what, but there are still a few situations where you think, well, it would be really good if Nappa could just put down a Cyberman here instead of having to approach to get any advantage, and there's a good chance that now he really can do that. Beginners are less likely to understand things like reduced recovery on this or block, as these things don't often set up a whole lot of changes for you. For pros, this sort of thing matters a lot more. As I noted on our Unistream yesterday, I'm speedrunning my illness, so I may still sniffle a little bit, and you'll get a little less said, but fortunately there's honestly not that many changes that make a difference per character, meaning that what we really have to talk about is big changes to the game flow itself. And it's hard to say whether or not specific big changes would have affected any given person, given that the sort of things they changed are either something you used a ton of and understood really well, or basically never used at all. And when you hear this, you're basically going to go, what does that even mean? How does that matter? Do were some bugs fixed in super dashes relative to vanishes, but that was rare and most of us just got used to whatever craziness happened. So they've added some consistency. We're glad that it doesn't go that way, but Oh, he survived that. Interesting. Nappa's overhead is the best. But this is probably going to come down to when Gohan activates his own Sparking Blast, and if Nappa can somehow grab him and do some damage before he can even activate it, because that would be really effective. But no, not today. But let's look into some of these changes. A lot of them are harder to understand unless you know the pros, have been in the Discords, reading Twitter to understand what it means for them. But a lot of these universal changes aren't really like that at all.
The outcome of this fight is anybody's guess.
One change that affects some people much more than others is that the Air Dragon Rush has had a property added to it that allows Crouch Heavy and other air invincible moves that defeat all air attacks, to beat it. Now this may seem like, why would that matter? Air Dragon Rush doesn't even grab grounded people, but remember that not everyone stays grounded when they use their 2H. And depending on how long the invulnerability of the 2H lasts, this may affect quite a lot of things. Overall, it means that characters like 18, Piccolo, to some extent Goku, maybe Vegeta, can be a little bit more liberal when it comes to hitting their 2H because they think their opponent is going to Dragon Rush them at the last moment of a jump. This, again, probably wasn't all that popular, but just being able to use that extra confidence to do that, or if there was some opponent who kept on doing this to get out of some situation, you know, definitely have the option. But that's your general care for this overall. But we're still monitoring Nappa's placements. It does look like his situation's gotten a lot better. Oh, that was a perfect timing for that, technically. That was even better. Only problem with that is that Krillin was not the one that ended up coming back in. Other minor changes Nappa got were actually related to his quarter circle back in S. The startup of the second hit of that move has been decreased, which is super helpful. In fact, it honestly just used to look kind of unnatural before. Cell got next to nothing. Cell's 2S is different. It's a little stronger, but Trunks' command grab range was increased, but apparently not enough to win in that situation. We're seeing something that looks like some meaningful change for Adult Gohan's stand heavy, as it lessens his footsie ability slightly. More or less fortunately though, this has not affected the player who would have actually cared about that, as she has already switched off of Adult Gohan. Bit of trading health there. Yep, sparking time. Something that probably affects us a lot more, in fact tons and tons of people have been talking about it, is the fact you can no longer call it assist out of block stun. Block recovery is slightly different and really hard to understand, but you can call assist during that. But straight block stun, you cannot. This limits the timing you can use to call assists while defending, and is what is one of the biggest takeaways from this patch, making people think, why would you do that?
Oh my god.
One of the biggest part of its effects though is more so that you can't mash a defensive assist while in pressure. There aren't that many of them in the game, but there are enough of them where it matters. Technically you can still mash quite a few of them, and what will happen is that eventually, when your character has moved from the state of I am blocking and can't counterattack to I was just blocking and could counterattack, but I would like to stay blocking, thank you. At that moment, the assist can start. But some assists are slow enough that their defensive capabilities really don't help you in that case. Other main changes for Trunks, for example, Trunks' forward chop can no longer be hit by simply 2H, which is kind of a big deal. Using 2H as a predictive methodology against Trunks has been decently good for a while if you really had some confidence in it, especially for characters who go off of the ground when they do it. So Trunks has lost one half of his mix-up and gotten a different half. The issue being that this move, it needs to be perfectly spaced and is a little slow. So, hard to say. But quick hop into instant air dragon rush is something that Trunks might be using more now. It's not really a popular strategy, but as for characters that can make it work, Trunks was definitely among them. But this inability to mash assists out of pressure is a really big deal when facing certain assists, such as Adult Gohan, certain things that Android 18 and Piccolo do, and so on. There's also been some discussion about changes to Team Gohan. The thing to understand about the changes to Team Gohan is that they don't strongly affect beginners a lot. Team Gohan's main way of being played by beginners is to be used as a punish character with a lot of damage. What he loses as a result of these changes, everything I can find indicates that this is a loss of pressure and mix-ups. Without these, he's obviously much more vulnerable and loses a lot of his utility in specific teams. But for example, in this team, where he is even more of a battery for built-up damage, Nodokan's likely to see less change involved. as the two characters he uses along with King Gohan are really good at opening up other characters. Meaning that Team Gohan's job just continues to be about the same. That said, losing parts of your pressure does matter a lot. And depending on which player you're up against, this can really stress you. You can see though that with his measured style, Narukon really doesn't suffer a lot at this level against that sort of thing. And the team synergy is so strong with Team Gohan in his correct place, especially with the meter building ability, that it's not a huge loss as long as he's not the one trying to defeat people during pressure. What this does mean, however, is that there will need to be a minor change at high-level strategy. In one of the things we mentioned previously, sometimes when you have a strong character who is capable of using meter easily to defeat your opponent, you make sure that that character is the last character living so that you can make your best possible comeback. Against a solid opponent, Team Gohan is no longer the character on this team that does this job. In fact, no character on this team does this job particularly better than any other. So it becomes more similar to my team, where once you've lost two people, you've probably lost the match. You no longer have that strong combat factor from Team Gohan's ability to actually open someone up in a desperate moment and blast them with all the meter he gained from everyone else. This puts a little more pressure on Narukon for meter management and character management, in addition to the stress of not being able to call Team Gohan from block stun. Whether or not this is a change that will result in a complete weakening of his team and style is hard to say, as players often evolve past quote-unquote small hardships. And a lot of the time when you hear things about how a character has been ruined, it generally means a bunch of people can't play this character anymore because the way they were playing him was taken away. And it's absolutely valid to complain and have those people be stressed out because they had the character for a reason, they liked the character for a reason, and someone took away one of those reasons. But just be careful when reading patch notes, because sometimes the way that the developer intends for a character to be played is not the way most people are playing them. But you might not be one of those most people. You might not have lost anything. You cannot say whether or not Narukon has specifically lost anything too serious. After all, tools are tools, and having more of them generally is good. But time will tell whether this is a I can no longer play this character, or more of a I have lost a tool that makes me work much harder and therefore my character is low tier, but I'll still make it work. Knowing Narukon and his absolute dedication to characters he loves, he's gonna make it work. But it is definitely something we're gonna have to watch and see just how much of an effect this is likely to have. But since I'm a little bit sick and therefore not playing, while this match is going on, since we've discussed most of the things, the other things for this matchup are really small. Things for Krillin with exploding Ki Blast on barriers, and some untapped time stuff that lets him get slightly better juggles or spacing. In other words, most Krillin mains are not out there crying because while he's mostly gotten stuff, it's more so, oh look, I'm slightly better now, in an almost unnoticeable way. High level players will notice it. Us, We're on our way there, we're trying. But we do play this game once a week. And I don't expect a lot of it to come up. For Super Saiyan Vegeta, he has like one change. That 2H flip that we have mentioned a little bit previously, where you are jumping forward and you flip forward, he can use it more like Android 18 can now, which is actually kind of a large buff for Vegeta if you play in precisely Just Fine style, but I doubt anyone else was really caring about that too much. It basically means that if Vegeta wants to approach an opponent from the air, he can more easily counter some things that they do, even from a really far jump, by just hitting his 2H in the air, moving toward them, and that's good. It's not a groundbreaking thing for most people. It's not going to change too much of his life. It creates a weird cross-up situation that he can use, especially on his dash jumps from more or less full screen. But, But it can possibly be helpful to Just Fine, given that she really didn't use jumping 2H before on Vegeta very much for that purpose, and maybe now it's more useful. If you listen to high-level players, small changes affect their game plan drastically. Be careful of this, because it may not be affecting you drastically. That's the big takeaway from this.
It's time to face your opponent.
Tenshinhan got a damage distribution alteration on his follow-ups to his level 3, which doesn't affect that much, honestly. It means that the way he kills people and how much effort he has to put into certain ones matters more, depending on how much meteor he has. It makes him more efficient as a character. You're less likely to be surprised. He also has reduced landing recovery on some of his quarter circle back moves, which is a big deal because it means that now a lot of the time you have to deal with him by backdashing or jumping out after them instead of just going with it. These are basically, I believe, diving style strikes, which he uses to close space and get situations set up. They're very good moves for keeping the opponent under control, and they're even better now that he basically doesn't have to worry about getting hit by larger moves or bigger setups when he uses them. I'm pretty sure he's still punishable. There's been no indication that he's OD now and this is the best thing ever. If he gets blocked or misses, I presume you can still punish him, but the question is, punish him with what? And that may make a big difference over time. King Gohan did get a minor buff to his jump S against characters who have barriers or similar things, as he now has a consistent explosion on the Ki Blast, which is a minor shift to make something more consistent. You're likely to see more effect later on when it comes to that assist change, as the team along with Narukon has always more or less used assists in the covering space method, or the pressure method, rather than the, oh, let me get out of this bad situation I'm in. In fact, as you can see, with this team, Team Gohan's solo pressure really doesn't come up. He's so good at punishing and buying time that, standardly speaking, Narukon generally won't have any moment where he can't call an assist to protect Team Gohan's pressure. It's when you play other teams or play Team Gohan in other teams and don't have that real support built around making him effective, that you'd have a lot of problems. Right now though, he's far too good at keeping things going forward, making quick attacks on the ground, long lunges and so on, so that basically no matter how far away the opponent gets from Team Gohan in his stuff, there's always a blast or a bar dot hit coming that will keep the backup going. And this is relatively easy to test because even with just Ryan's defense, which is decently good, and improving every day in this game, if you expect Team Gohan to normally get punished, it doesn't seem to be happening. Changes relative to my characters will probably be discussed later, but I'd be playing, so let's talk about that now so that we can cover it in case I don't get around to talking if I do play. Android 18 has gotten 2 effective changes. The size of her barrier, or at least the effective blocking space of her barrier, has been increased when called as an assist, and when she calls her brother to act as the barrier. Her jumping quarter circle back and S, which is likely to help in one specific situation but not too likely to change a bunch of play styles or anything. Defensive moves, getting buffs, often does not lead to a bunch of technology popping out of nowhere, but an increased barrier size may also improve the spacing at which the opponent bounces off the barrier. If it does this as well, it can definitely open the opponent up to more things, and she can take a couple more risks than before. However, in certain cases, if they hit the space early, it may turn out to be useless. We're definitely going to see a difference in Cybermen, given that the assists now cover Nappa for much closer to the amount of time required to get Cybermen out and keep going. The bigger question is what to do precisely after placing one down now, since it will change the opponent's mindset. Before, the opponent would be relatively confident that they could get to Nappa in time, and more likely therefore to make a mistake about their approach if they were not quite correctly timed. Since they do after all have to wait until the end of the assist, and they might mistime that. At the high levels this was unlikely, but it was a thing. Now that the opponent is much less likely to even think that they could make it to Nappa, they are going to switch mentally to the perspective, I must deal with the Cyberman, I can't stop it. And interestingly, this may make it less effective, as Nappa won't necessarily have a good way to trick the opponent into anything. Depending on the spacing though, he might be able to increase his trickiness relative to putting it out in the first place, and therefore make the Cyberman more effective based on being closer to the opponent in the first place. That of course is going to take a lot of practice. As for Piccolo, Piccolo got a lot of things that look like buffs. And they're iffy. Most Piccolo players could tell you these are clearly buffs, they improved the character. But the situations in which they improved Piccolo were not situations Piccolo often wanted to be in. And this is speaking from the perspective of someone who actually did get buffed by these things. So to be clear about this, I got buffed, for sure. Standard Piccolo players? Hard to say. Piccolo has quite a few moves that are basically reaching with the Demon Hand and the speed of certain moves. He also has a wall bounce on the grounded version of his forward elbow. This could be useful in certain situations for sure, but that would mostly be for corner stuff. It opens up new options for him that he didn't have before, but honestly, how often was he hitting with this? It's more so that now they've given him a reason to combo into it. Which is nice, but it's a ground combo. And ground combos are not exactly something that people were thinking of as Piccolo's strong point. I guess now they've added some options. He has decreased startup on the 3S Demon Shocker, and increased hitbox on both versions of Demon Shocker, also with opponent knockback and effect on hit changes. But when you think about it, is that what we really wanted? I can hop in and find out. But the simple way to understand it is, before, those moves did not knock the opponent down, knock them back, or anything. You kind of just stun them in place. Which, depending on what you were doing with your team or your ideas, was a good thing for you. You got to go into 5H, even though it didn't have the smash property anymore, and get some forms of space control if your opponent tried to get out of the situation. But if it knocks back now, it's probably just slightly less damage overall with a different setup, because Piccolo has no longer moved forward. He's probably just put the opponent farther away from him. For me, this technically probably is still good, because the entire reason I had to do the 5H was to put the opponent farther away from me. It makes him a little easier to play, let's put it that way. As an assist, he is slightly better now if you put the orb on the screen during cinematic displays, which affects how you can use his assists along with supers. Has a lot of uses in small spaces, and I'm sure we will see some new cool things from top level players with perfectly spaced and timed Piccolo orbs to go along with their supers. Ooh, went for the banish instead of the sparking blast. Decision making is hard. Still mostly even though, except for the fact that Team Gohan is a damage machine. Still, this is fairly heavy scaling, and there is still sparking to use if need be, so it's hard to say. This is actually a good system, as Cell tends to take blue damage from Team Gohan more than any other time. He can afford to take a lot more risks while in sparking, as he'll just probably recover out of all of it. It's not as helpful for Tianshinhan, but I don't think we're caring about that particular thing right now. So with some improved decision making, just fine is able to manage to keep that one out due to a lucky slash well-timed Dragon Rush on Bardock. But Nanakan has always noted that he does have to work on the Dragon Rush response. That was a scramble though, so it would have been super hard regardless. You're right next to the opponent and you don't know whether or not they're going to go for defense or offense or Dragon Rush. It's really stressful. In those uncertain situations, hit your Sparking Blast immediately, people. Just for the sake of potentially keeping your character alive. You don't want to die in scrambles at that time and lose a character, especially on a team who we are now noting may really need to start depending a whole ton on having all three characters up. Princess changes were not anything anyone probably cares about. The cinematic on his light auto combo changed a little bit, and it said that it changed the effect on the returning saucers when they hit on the way back. Possibly change the direction they knock the opponent in or something? Again, maybe if I feel a little better, we'll get to see some of it. I can occasionally land this move. His special level 3 has been changed. It hits harder but also has longer startup, meaning that it doesn't have a whole lot of uses in the strict situations it had it in before. It's probably not going to save you from all of the same things. As the opponent can now option select it, similar to how one does against Ed. That's the impression I get from what I've seen. You go in, you go for like a light on Frieza's makeup. He's not really a character who you can worry about doing this with, and then you just block. And there's a decent chance that he'll just miss. Or you'll block through it. Whereas before, I think it was that a low medium would have messed him up. Well, there's our increased command grab range, making Trunks much more capable of using either. I know it's hard to notice if you haven't played Trunks' general thing before, but that was definitely better. That was definitely... I could have risked that. I don't know for sure if I would have risked that before, but now I'm pretty sure I can hit it. Full use of meter to clear that up and get Trunks out. And we're back to mostly even. We're seeing, of course, much better meter management from everyone. Nothing has been changed about meter flow or meter management in the game as a whole. But since the meter gain from the playstyles that the bots have left up, it has been helpful, at least for OmniRabbit for sure. You're much more likely to see more meter available at almost all times. Super dash responses and super dash timings. Helping to pick up some extra damage and timing. Ooh, that nearly hit. And of course, the dirtiest of Krillin is that if you can't hit with the level 3, might as well get something out of it. And that something doesn't look like all that bad. Barking activated, making sure to keep both characters alive here. And that may in fact be one of the most important things that has happened in this match. You can find that most people in this lounge are not people who benefit from using sparking on their third character. It's almost always the second character where we want to use our sparking blast, because it's so much more important to keep the synergy of the team going than to supposedly get huge damage at the end. You have to have a lot of faith in a specific character to make that a really good idea. There's another minor change that may not be as obvious to someone who doesn't play Krillin or doesn't think about that sort of thing. If you feel generally more confident having the use of various moves in terms of untech time, what the general meaning of this is, untech time is relative to distance for a lot of things. You hear increased untech time and you think, well, that doesn't make any difference to me. But if you can use that increased untech time to convert into damage, to reach the opponent in a space you couldn't before, that's the thing we're likely to see most of the effect of those sorts of changes, both at mid and high levels. So if you see your move say increased untech time, and you connect with this move some cases where you can't necessarily land another move, go for your other move. See what happens.
It's all or nothing.
The increased super dash defense from the bot is going to be a little stressful based on the fact that now one of the other changes is difference in the Z change hit stop. You can use the bot to test this at your leisure, but the overall thing you need to understand is simple. Before, the hit stop of a Z change, i.e. change dash, was not quite the same as that for a super dash. Hit stop on block is now the same, and it may matter to you. This is further compounded by the fact that if the opponent's character was near the ground before, when he did a super dash, there was a chance he would land immediately. And your opponent didn't know, therefore, whether or not to go for a defensive tactic or counter or not. This bug has been fixed, and basically, as long as you super dash, even if you hit the opponent near the ground, you will still bounce off in the same way. You need for good consistency in a lot of situations, but not necessarily one that helps you to keep up offense. It's more so a buff for defensive players. Is that a lot of proration? Not enough proration. Vegeta was probably the best quote-unquote to lose in this matchup though. Although Cell's defense against Tianjinhan is probably pretty terrible if he's on the ground. You do have that potential to keep things up. And this matchup is way better for Nappa, even though he probably needs to activate Sparking after all this. That pressure string did do a really good job of soaking up the sparking though, so it looks like we have at least a chance at this. However, again, all that training with Super Dash stuff has made it a little easier to push through, as we know that this is at least part of how you beat Nutacon's team as a generality. Nutacon's fighting style often involves measuring very specific spaces and keeping the opponent at bay. Super Dash, when properly targeted, tends to deal with this fairly well. But doesn't look like it's going to be enough today. After all, you can only Super Dash so many times before your opponent waits for it and punishes you. Still a good run overall.
地獄の Get ready! Go! Counter!
With the new changes to Nappa, Nappa is now the better matchup for Trunks. Trunks is not a character who deals particularly well with Cybermen, and he doesn't deal well with Nappa's range. But in terms of planning, the question is, do we really want Trunks swapped out? Is this a benefit? Because the obvious answer is just to switch straight to Adult Gohan, who has a much better chance against Nappa as a whole, and we could even call him advantage. You have to be able to think of these strategies fairly heavily early on to decide really what you want to do about them. The drop through! But now with Adult Gohan low on health, the situation may suit it a little better, actually. In other words, Nappa is now more dangerous. Fortunately, Vegeta does corner work, so let's do that corner work first. The cell assist was a little too slow on that, and therefore we've got some extra to do. Ooh, that was dirty. With this situation now, Nappa can be held back or lost. It's up to Just Fine to decide, am I going to try to play this out with my advantage matchup, i.e. Cell, or am I going to let Nappa soak up some damage? Nappa soaked up some damage. But now he has enough health to be brought back in and soak up even more, while Cell recovers. Hard decision whether or not to go for sparking there, but it looks like it didn't work out one way or the other. But this time we've definitely seen the sparking come into play. And it looks like the tactics have paid off. As with enough meter, Vegeta can kill most characters in sparking quite fast. So overall, risking Nappa was probably the best option. However, taking down a fully stocked Krillin with sparking still is going to be really hard. This isn't exactly the character against whom that buff for Vegeta helps though. So, we may see Vegeta kept for a little bit longer. Cell does have some advantage against Krillin when fighting from the air. Krillin can attack him, but it's not very strong. It tends to drag out the match, whereas being close on the ground to Krillin leads to that. But that change for Vegeta means that now he can jump at Krillin and use his air to H to get certain chips. Looks like Krillin's zoning paid off in the end though, as there was no longer any Cell assist to make him flinch. Once again, this game is a lot about planning. At the lower levels especially, before you have all the heavier combos, or even if you have a lot of combos but not a lot of tactics to go with them, and can't be consistent with those combos, you definitely need to try to come up with full tactics for matches. At least to the level of this matchup, who I want on, who I want down.
The outcome of this fight is anybody's guess.
But the Wolf has arrived, and with him, a bunch more characters to talk about. We could have talked about them before, but I was kind of expecting him, so we set that aside for the time being. One of the big beneficiaries of this patch is Broly. Broly's armor now starts up even earlier. Like, really early. It isn't even just like one of them. Almost all of Broly's armor starts early. He has also a minor quality of life change where his 2H has better stuff. The hitbox at the bottom of the move is a little better for when characters are coming in really low with moves that would do that, and then they are small. That move did kind of go heavy high up before. But mostly with Raleigh, you're watching for how am I supposed to hit this character. He is even more oppressive than before and will go through a ton of things. As for Android 16, he has a couple of moves that have been changed to multi-hit. Oh wait, no, just one. The 214S is now multi-hitting. This is good for breaking armor, setting up certain situations better, etc. Block stun has been decreased on his assist, which is going to be a problem for the Wolf specifically, but not too much of one. However, 236S has decreased startup and less recovery on Rift, once again meaning you can get away with a lot more. Aside from that, there's not too much to be concerned about in terms of changes for this character. But one of the big characters that suffers from not having their assists able to be used out of block is, in fact, 16. But in Brawly's case, we're about to considering the fact that Brawly can now react with armor to a ton of things. And you have to care about this a lot. As mentioned, Cell got very few changes. The Wolf is who we'll see more of the 2S changes from, but it's still not less likely to be too big a deal. Ooh, Cyberman trap. There's that astral awareness again. This is another matchup where the change in Vegeta's jumping to H is likely to matter, as it makes it easier for him to approach and evade Android 16 stuff. But I don't expect a large change from it. Aha! Trust in the Cyberman! I would not have thought it was still there. But we are talking about the Jackal player, so good job, Green Dude.
It's time to face your opponent!
On the looks of it, we're going to see some Beerus along with Cooler. Another card in a bit. Beerus got straight up buffs. Beerus is just faster. We can consider it that the God of Destruction just decided, y'all seem okay, y'all can manage this. I might fight a little more seriously now. Basically, assume that for every move Beerus has, his startup was decreased. One of them got armor, and his level 3 lowered the recovery on hit. which actually has some meanings, but it's hard to explain at our level, so I will leave that to you to look up and ask a few high-level players about, because I'm not confident that I know what that means. But just generally assume, if you played Beerus before and your complaint was, I keep getting hit out of stuff, why is this character so slow? He's a god of destruction. He decided to face you with more of his power, but is still playing more or less the same way. Cooler basically didn't get anything much. There was a bug in his assist, and that's it. He does have another change to his jumping. Increases L or quarter circle forward M, but that was a cinematic bug. He's basically the same. I seriously fear this Brawly armor thing. Because now it means that Brawly can play neutral way better. Whereas before it was, I'm going to oppress you and hope that I made a good read on the armor. Now he can go, I don't really feel like it, I'm just going to beat you up. That was really well spaced. And got a huge reward for it. Amara's unlikely to play today, but the changes to Goku, Goku, and Goku Black are not a big deal. Goku's overhead style attack is no longer 2Hable, i.e. you're no longer invulnerable by using 2H against this move. I can't imagine a lot of mid-level or low-level players were doing that, but if you could consistently go, Goku's gonna hit me with this teleport punch thing, I should hit 2H. Don't do that anymore. Base Goku has had some buffs to Kaioken. And that's about it actually. He seems to be where they wanted him to be, and therefore you shouldn't worry about too many changes. As for Goku Black, he hits harder. That's about it. So again, buffs, meaningful, but not totally difficult to understand or anything. See, this entire change, this right here, where you basically go, okay, Brawly stood still, I got some time, now you have to go, I have to play neutral with Brawly. And that means you have to worry about a ton of things you didn't have to worry about before. But, got him. This is still fairly even though, as we've discussed many times, that sparking blast cell with a little help is a big deal. And Cell versus Krillin is not really disadvantaged to Cell that much. It takes longer for Cell to beat Krillin because he has to spend so much time in the air. But at this point, if the speed is the only thing we're worried about, Cell still wins out in the end. Just really slowly. Oh, but that Kamehameha was probably perfect, and is it the end? It is. Beerus's armor has been added to his 214S. It has decreased startup and armor properties in the middle of the move. I don't know what that means, and we have not been able to find any demonstrations of this, like, clearly being used, but I wouldn't necessarily think of this as something that most people would try to use for anything. It's just there. But generally assume 214 Jump 214, decrease startup, increase movement speed. 236S, decrease startup, decrease total duration, which is probably a really big deal. And 214S, decrease startup, armor in the middle of the move. But it is not that Beerus can now beat your stuff because you're super dashing. It is that if you super dash through Beerus' stuff, he will armor your super dash. Which is honestly just as scary. If not worse, really. So yeah, he's decided, I'm putting up a bit more power this time. Overall, you should think of it in terms of speed to feel more comfortable throwing out more stuff for Beerus. Frieza is basically unchanged, as mentioned before. Depending on the situation, Frieza was one of those people who benefited from having defensive assists or acting as one, but he's also not one of the characters who's going to likely be crippled or anything by it, especially on the jump back, as he has such a good jump back game as is. That one got prorated more than I expected, but here we go. This has basically probably increased a couple of Beerus combos and made him feel much more comfortable just throwing out his 236S in positions like that, which is super important for his game plans. As now, he's like, you know what, I don't actually care, I can just do what I want. It does allow him to have a good recovery from air scrambles that he didn't have before. Cooler and his big body problems. Cooler is one of the few big body characters in this game who does not get mix-ups off his block super dashes. Well, at least not good ones. Meaning that his offense really hasn't gotten any better. It's sad fate, but Cooler really is, and we've said it from the beginning, sort of a specialized character. You play Cooler because you have a very specific idea of what you want to happen. Well, on the other hand, this doesn't really change things for Brawly, does it? Because Brawly's armor is still armor. But Beerus manages to get that kill, even if with a little bit more meter than usage than most people would have wanted. He still has tons of it. This match is nowhere near decided and was nowhere near decided at the fall of Cooler. Based on that, and it's exactly as I thought before. While that move does have armor now, it's still not necessarily enough to save you from a late super dash. It saves you from people with mashy super dashes. People who just super dash immediately without even thinking about what you're doing, rather than reacting to Beerus doing that move. Still, this is a good scramble situation solution. Just not really a keep away tool, because I guess they really still don't want to make Beerus much of a zoner, and the rest of us are going to have to live with that. Ooh. That is another brilliant use for it, as it seems just correct timing for dealing with Vanish, making it even more useful in scrambles. So Beerus now has scramble defense, which is something he was fairly lacking before. So if you find yourself into this character but didn't know what to do when things didn't go your way, you now have a more or less instant go-to option. Just blast in every direction and solve your problems.
Time to begin the match.
Against this team, though, it's unlikely for this Beerus armor to come up, as neither Justine nor any of her team has much that would involve trying to beat Beerus in a scramble. What will come up is the increased speed on a bunch of his moves, allowing Cell to get clipped in neutral. This also creates more mix-ups in a way, as you have to be more careful about whether or not you can PH a bunch of Beerus stuff, but you should generally still try. When you are grounded by Beerus and think you have a scramble going on, just 2H. Heck, if you're in the air and you think you have a scramble going on, still just 2H. And there's the buff to Vegeta's 2H mattering. Beerus as a character tends to spend just enough time in the air that 2Hing him as a general thing won't lead to any danger for you. And with her team, with Nappa to cover if anything doesn't look right, Vegeta can definitely get away with it, Nappa can sort of get away with it. Cell is, as usual, the only one who's 2H doesn't get away with much. Possibly worth it. Nappa's ability to outmaneuver both Frieza and Cooler isn't really interesting and is... you consider it to be respected in the lore that Nappa was still alive. At all. He outmaneuvers both characters fairly well until they have meter, and even then there's still a little bit of trouble for them both. Partially why I don't play Frieza against her Nappa, as you can't really pin him down. In this case, it seems that the tactical decision has actually been the opposite. See how much damage she can deal with her damage dealing characters, and if they take a lot of damage, use Nappa to cover for them and buy time. Generally a good strategy. This has always been at least partially how she intended to use Nappa's ability to stay out of trouble. So it's a decent start here. That big damage, for example, is not likely to lead to much overall. Nappa's blasts are a little different than most people, meaning that he doesn't really fear Beerus, and therefore he can, again, still buy time. As Beerus can get in on him eventually, as you've just seen with the flip, but given the initial plan, this is probably not relevant, as it was all just a setup for Vegeta to get that health. It's gonna hit. It is. With no sparking to reabsorb that, that is actually a good hit. So we're back here. We are waiting to see, does Vegeta take enough damage? And is it necessary to bring Nappa back in to cover for Vegeta's lost health again? Seems that she's decided to make that decision now. There's a little bit of a hit. Close to the corner, so there might be some big, or at least decent damage. But again, Frieza's stuff tends to scale kind of bad. And mostly I expect this to be more the same. Beerus can at least do the job though, so maybe, but without meter, Vegeta's already recovered anyway, so we're back to this. This is the Jackal directive right here. Can you name it out, basically? Is this enough damage? Doesn't look it. We're back to Nappa buying time with blasts and super dashes and some conversions. But the 2H! Is it going to be enough meter to do anything? No, not quite enough. And again, breaking through her defense is a chore, so... It's still kind of close actually. But saving Nappa, getting back his health. He doesn't have a lot to recover, but it might still be enough. I've noticed he's super hard to pin down here. And just buying more time tends to help. Cell is not so good at keeping away from these brothers, and may end up taking a fairly heavy hit. But he does still have his assist to back him up. And there's Vegeta. But the final clip. Neither of these characters has a bunch of stuff they can do with that 3 meter though, so... the tension, but Cell now has the level 3 and the benefits, so there's not really much Frieza can immediately do. He can't timer scam without building up more meter, so Cell probably takes it. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you play defense, tactics-wise at least.
不意打ちでも狙っていたのか。残念だったな。
Dealing with Noticon's full team, that would have probably been a much harder push and involved a lot more deflect. If it even worked. But Frieza and Cooler do have some weaknesses that you really have to think fairly hard about if you're deciding to use them together.
The outcome of this fight is anybody's guess. It's all or nothing.
Beerus is now considerably stronger against Trunks. Period. A lot of Trunks' ability against Beerus depended on his ability to quickly close distance and annoy Beerus with his options, before Beerus could do anything himself. Removing that means that you've got nothing. In fact, Unrabbit's entire team is weak to Beerus. So we see Noticon probably making the decision to let Frieza and Cooler try to carry some of the load, buy time, and make sure that Beerus recovers. He probably will get called back later. Even more useful if somehow Unrabbit can be forced to bring back Trunks. But it doesn't really matter because, as noted, Beerus is strong against this whole team. He can constantly quickly change both his air trajectories and his spacings on the ground, even then with no real offense against him. with the new armor on that move, now they have even less offense against it. At least before they could move around and build up the chance for the vanish. Now, good luck with that. So yes, at least according to us, Beerus vs Trunks is now a terrible matchup for Trunks, and you should avoid playing it if you could have. Once again, Cooler and Frieza buying time for Beerus. Healing him up. Using up at least some of the meter. Beerus doesn't really need a lot of the meter. So these two are free to use it up. And when they run out of it, call Beerus back. It's a fairly simple strategy, but it's likely to be really effective. Because they're so much stronger against most people when using the meter. And relatively weak when they can't. You see here, for example, that without the meter, Omni Rabbit really wasn't afraid of Cooler very much. And most of this is not going to work in the long term because it's too easy to recover the health. As long as Krillin is alive, that's going to be stressful. But even that is not necessarily enough. Because you still have to now put all your effort into dealing with, effectively, the team killer. If your opponent can tire you out dealing with their most basic matchup, and then force you to still deal with the character who is strongest against your team, your life is pain. A good decision there to go for the spark immediately. After all, if you must play Trunks against Beerus, it's probably better to have at least a chance of killing Beerus as quickly as possible. Good switch out as well. And got him. Possibly execution error on that level 3, but one way or another, that part of the match is over. From here it's just a matter of slowly beating Frieza. He is decent without any assists at all, otherwise he probably wouldn't fit in my team where the assists are not really there to do anything. And Krillin vs Frieza is relatively fair. Interestingly, I found that I have much more luck hitting Krillin with Frieza's saucers than with any of his actual zoning. Presumably because Krillin is trying to outmaneuver Frieza, and therefore giving Frieza enough time to throw the saucer. But this time, the result is victory Krillin.
The outcome of this fight is anybody's guess.
So, in this case, Broly might as well stay in. Once Broly has up his shield, Beerus doesn't have a whole lot he can do. And Beerus can't easily close space to Broly for free, meaning that if they end up at full screen, Broly basically gets to put up that for free. Beerus' various air respacing is not something Broly tends to care about either, think that the strongest character against Broly in this team is probably Frieza. Cooler does have some ability to keep up with him in terms of range, but Broly's assists at the moment are a little bit more effective at keeping Cooler in position than the other way around. Still, it looks like with Broly having taken damage, the Wolf would rather have Cell in at least for the moment. The Wolf's defense with Cell is somewhat less than Justline's, but you can still probably rely on the same sort of thing. If Cell is in the air, it's a little harder for Cooler, and not too hard for Frieza, but if you know how to maneuver yourself, it can at least be decent. This situation isn't that favorable to Broly as the armor makes less difference here, but Frieza has to play more or less full zoning to make that a good idea. Oof. That's a thing now. Fine. Well, this character has definitely been improved in ways that the Wolf is probably loving. And is much more fluid and natural for what he wants to do with him. Cooler does not manage that well against 16 because 16 can do his air blasts, and does not manage that well against Broly because he's Broly. The best way to explain it is that Cooler is a little too linear, whereas Broly is... Broly only cares about linear characters when they're really close to it. Probably not worth the sparking on that, but maybe no, if he doesn't die. But he does! Could have been good to maybe activate the sparking at the end of it anyway, just to keep that combo from killing. But these decisions are usually hard. This is a very favorable matchup for Beerus. He can force 16 to super dash through a ton of stuff, and now that he has the scramble defense, that's not even going to be enough. Fortunately, Broly still has enough health to maybe put up a fight. Unfortunately, not quite enough health. So this situation is, tactically speaking, pretty disadvantageous, but we got it. And the anti-air deals with the main threat. From here, it's not so hard for 16 as he mostly just has to deal with that. His special from the air, he tends to deal with Frieza fairly well, should probably deal with Cooler decently, and with sparking active, neither of these characters can really chip off the health in the way that you'd expect or hope for, as they tend to do a lot of the health damage, or not much damage at all. To the point where basically 16 is invulnerable for the duration of the sparking dash. He slowly gets worn down, of course, but overall, it's not so bad. The main problem being managing to defeat these characters using mostly just Air S. With enough meter, there may still be some tricks that are possible, but as we did not see much use of the Air S, Frieza got a bit more freedom of movement and was able to push through. An interesting question would be whether or not these changes to Beerus have finally made it so that Natakon's optimal team is Beerus, Tien, Team Gohan. some minor inattentiveness, so you can consider it sort of a break. Since this is a repeat of the last match, I won't necessarily have that much to say, and since you're currently probably not watching it. But we will be continuing. This is not in any way indicative of stream ends or anything. And we are back in with a look at Gotenks.
Get ready.
The main thing to understand about Gotenks is that there were some strange interactions between Galactic Donut and assists that it hit. And that his 2H works better. That's about it. It's similar to Brawly where it's easier to anti-air, or rather, anti-air. There are some specific situations where air attacks can hit very low, and because Gotenks was going into the air at the time, with his own 2H, it was a little weird. This is mistakes. And that's it. There's some other stuff with his level 3, but again, for the most part, this is not the thing that's going to be affecting most people. Generally, you shouldn't expect too much to change. While he still has a decent advantage against his character when his shield is up. Ooh, emergency maintenance? Or just weird connection? Because they would totally do that. Oh, no, it's just an internet drop from Dwarf, it looks like. So we spin back in.
The outcome of this fight is anybody's guess. It's all or nothing.
You can't really see that shift, even though it really isn't a matter of anything related to any change in the game. However, there may have been some things that did change about it. Note before we mentioned that the Z change previously had different hit stop than the Super Dash, meaning that if you knew a lot of Super Dash based mix-ups for Gotenks or any similar character, it was possible it didn't work quite as you expected when using the aerial corner Z change, which is a core part of a lot of defensive styles, including Just Rice. With characters like Vegeta and Gotenks, it is relatively easy to use this technology. Basically, to be in the air with Cell, and since Cell can attack, the opponent is more likely to be blocking, since they can't afford to just be rough and ready. Cell can therefore Z-change at that point, unless the opponent is willing to risk the 2H as you've just seen. With Vegeta and Gotenks, you actually have reasonable mix-ups off of a Super Dash in that situation. And now with some consistency, because it doesn't really matter whether or not they change it, It doesn't matter which direction the hit stop was different in, it would still mess with your combos no matter what you were doing. The question is really whether or not there were a bunch of Gotenks mix-ups that had to be either learned differently if he came in on a Z change, or if it's only the Z change ones that really helped or worked. So whether or not this is a nerf to that style or to Gotenks' play in general has a lot more to do with whether or not there was advantaged before after Z change ones or not. This is another example of how something can affect a team's tactics much more than it affects anything else. Cell's defense increases if he knows that when he Z changes into someone else on his team and they manage to hit, that those people are now not unsafe. This tiny change can influence all sorts of things, be it from the Dragon Rush game, to meter building, to confirms on health changes. Ah, he managed to get to the sparking. That defense stands. Is this going to be a switch combo? The standard switch combo. That strength of Gotenks to basically confirm off the super dash no matter where he ended up in the spacing is a big deal here. But if it comes down to time, the victory is going to Omni Rabbit today. And that is sealed by the fact that, as a result, therefore, Just Fine has to be more aggressive, and Omni Rabbit can just expect this. But you might as well be more aggressive, given that you're going to win by timeout anyway. Unless you're the type of player who just prefers to lose a specific way. So we are into Netacon's, hey, these guys are solid team. I have next to nothing to say about this team. Except to note for the viewer to judge the synergy of them yourself. My opinion, which is completely opinion, is that these three don't have good synergy together. In that they're relatively easy to download, it just takes a while to actually get damage on them. You could consider them a defensive team, but I'm not really sure I consider them defensive either. So, we'll watch Netacan and see how much he proves that wrong. I'd say from his side he should probably watch for Dragon Rushes as it is one of their main weaknesses. They're relatively easy to Dragon Rush and they don't get any benefits after those Dragon Rushes. So the team slowly gets dismantled since overall you have to take a lot more risks. They're like playing a few Shotos. It kind of works if you're really good at a particular thing, but eventually you'll do an uppercut when you shouldn't and your opponent will dismantle you. That's the best explanation. They lack the cheapness. This team is absolutely vanilla ice cream in a plain cup. What I can mention is something interesting that came up in our last bot when we were talking about doing damage off your super dashes. The main thing to understand is that damage off super dashes sucks. Landing a super dash into damage that does not create a setup is a terrible way to try to get damage. This is why you see so many of the team doing their super dashes into setups rather than going for the full combo. The damage loss is just too high. It's almost completely a waste of meter to do it, except if your opponent is quite close to dead. As you see there. And because it's all blue damage, when you're in sparking, it doesn't even do anything. That, on the other hand, matters. So, going for the metered might not have been the best idea, especially since it didn't even work, but had it worked, still wouldn't have hit all that hard. So, it is something very important to remember. If you are going to be using the super dash to get your opponent opened up, then make sure to balance it such that your benefit is more so getting in than I can hurt you now. I wonder if that would have worked if I had gone into more supers. No, I don't think so. against this team, they're a little more effective because this particular group of characters is very strong against Brawly's and 16's Super Dash mix-ups. But they're also not really good at stopping those characters from playing neutral, so you kind of don't have to use the Super Dash mix-ups. Once Brawly's armored up, therefore, it's basically a matter of a beatdown with no strong way to get in. Rather than go for the aerial Super Dash mix-ups, therefore you see Brawly here going for the one straight from the ground, testing the opponent's reactions, seeing what they do, or in some cases not even going for the mix-up, just going straight into the attack style, which is decent, honestly. While this team generally moves a little too slowly to specifically get a lot out of the Dragon Rush aspect of it, the main difference will be a matter of how good is your defense. But as we know, the wolf's defense is a bit less than just Vine's in a lot of situations, meaning it's more likely. That was risky. Meaning that he's more likely to get opened up by straight, direct attacking. Meaning that Cell is probably the better option here, as he can mash out of a lot more stuff and can stay off of the ground and therefore doesn't have to deal with as much of it, period. Their straight up attacking does not really bother Brawly as much, as he can easily wait until they push themselves out and go for a longer attack. With the current assist setup of this team, there's no way to change this. They're always going to either push you out more or fail to set up the next advance in the movement, making it a little bit easier overall to defend in that particular way. Ooh! That was a good timing for that sparking. Just enough bonus to get a character kill. And soak up some damage too. Increasing the recharge speed of the assist is also helpful in that precise way. And this really helps out Brawly in a lot of situations. But there's still a lot of meter to worry about. Fortunately for the Wolf, this team is also really not good at doing too much with the meter. But that was a bit too aggressive, and therefore the meter did get to be used correctly for a Brawly kill. Probably one of the more important wins in the game. Goku doesn't work well against Cell. Respect the lore. He doesn't work well against 16 either. More respect for the lore. He's not good at getting either character opened up enough to do straight damage. Wait, what started this combo? Never mind. Still enough. But again, a matter of defense and Gohan's longer range helping it to work out, as he can start effectively meaties from further away and defeat the opponent who mashes on Wake Up.
Get ready for battle!
Well, we are now moving into the last hour of stream where I generally have less to say. We've covered most of the matchups, and even with the change, the main things to be discussed about Kid Buu and similar will be directly noted during that match, but since I won't have much to say in this match,
Are you ready?
here's the primer. Kid Buu has lost some strength in the light blue ball. Mainly it's increased startup though, which doesn't matter as much because you must remember this only matters if the move was started from the ground. So it's unlikely that Counter-Key Dynasty styles are going to be particularly affected, as that was much more of a, hey, I do this meaty this way, I have this pressure based on this thing. It's probably a big nerf primarily to locking someone down with an assist and then them not being able to deflect the blue ball because they don't have the time, and the blue ball itself leading to more pressure. If it has now made the blue ball deflectable, then that's a big change. But that's the implication I got. At least certain assists no longer work with Kid Buu as well. And I think the main community has already figured this out and already started to decide, are we switching? Are we rethinking this? Are we going to adapt? Etc. And the rest is just the air to go. We didn't really go into Bardock's changes before, but as mentioned, it's mostly increased untech time and they changed the Oki on his level 3. The increased untech time on his various quarter circle bat moves though is probably good for Akatsuki Dynasty because of the aforementioned. The thing with this move is likely to lead into better juggles or at least better advantage situations. So look out for that a little bit when those hit. And finally for Vegeta Blue, he also has the jumping 2H increase. And his super grab, you know, the super dashing grab he has, is no longer as easily stopped by Ki Blast, which is a straight buff. I.e. you can use this to go through Ki Blast earlier. I'm not sure if this would specifically mean you get better mix-ups. Most people would otherwise have been trying to deal with this if they thought they had to deal with this move. And it's not a move that tends to be close. It tends to be done from far enough away that the opponent is immediately thinking about Ki blasts. So it's hard to say what exactly the use of this is. It was more so a normalization, probably. Someone realizing, this is annoying that this works this way, you should probably fix it. And someone going, fine, I'll fix it. And that being it. Defeating Trunks during the sparking of that might have a big influence on this match. Oh, that was a perfect use of the Vanish by Brawly to get that space. Quinn's pretty good at dealing with Brawly's stuff. And switching is not going to work. After all, there's been a bit too much work on that Super Dash bot. Since Krillin really doesn't fear Brawly's armor as much as basically any other character and can keep him way further away where the armor doesn't matter as much, this is a good matchup even with Brawly's armor changes. Or relatively, the matchup did not change in Brawly's favor due to the armor. Whereas many other matchups in the game probably did, Krillin will still do his thing.
Get ready for a Dragon Ball Rumble!
So, Kid Boo's issue in this matchup is probably more so that Brawly's armor is likely to be more oppressive and more troublesome for him.
It's all or nothing!
More so than anything relative to his standing Blue Ball. As ways to use Blue Ball go, spacing was one main option, and it is the option that Kanzaki Dynasty employs more, i.e. airily spacing it and using that one to the main thing, shifting the situation, so she's basically unaffected. That said, the high attack strike zones of this team make a lot of the things that the aerial strikes do a little more difficult if coming in from far away. Forcing her to either play more neutral, use more aerial projectiles, or hold back a bit more in her patience in mid-screen. This is of course where assists come in. As they're likely to become an increasingly important part of her style. Meaning we have yet another team who Jay basically has to keep all three people alive. Looks like we're going to see a rotation due to that control issue. Well, most likely while she fixes that, we'll get some other related matches.
Android 60 win.
すまない。俺はまだ壊れるわけにはいかないんだ。
It's time to face your opponent.
This is likely to be a true test of this team, and finally probably give me enough data to actually make a judgment, at least one that is a little bit based on something other than intuition and opinion. Anurada's team is super defensive, decently good at keeping that going, and able to heal. Also having decently long range and good damage based on when they tend to do certain things. Seems like it would be one of the hardest challenges for our vanilla ice cream team over here. Because at the end of the day, no matter how solid your team is, there's always someone more solid than you. And if you can't do much damage, you stand little chance. Andrade's biggest lack in this matchup is probably that he would need to Super Dash more himself in order to make this, well, Dragon Rush more himself in order to make this work. But setting that up and having the in-state for it is not the same thing. So it's hard to judge this in the long haul situation. These characters also get about as much benefit off of missed or whiffed super dashes as the vanilla team, meaning that I keep saying super dashes, what is that? Whiffed or tapped dragon rushes as the vanilla team, generally meaning that if they are tapped, you're not really as stressed out or worried about the fact that it happened from Metacon side. Krillin vs Adult Gohan is a very strange match. Adult Gohan does have technical advantage if Krillin is not using a bunch of his after image stuff. It's easy to track him and therefore easy to hold on to him. If Krillin has a good handle on the after image, Adult Gohan's moves tend to riff in ways that let Krillin do more stuff to him than anything else, even if it is not very damaging or safe to try. This slowly makes Adult Gohan block more and more, which again would open you up to super dashes. And again, I call it super dashes. What is wrong with me today? I blame my sickness. Mental crosswires due to illness.
Get ready for a Dragon Ball Rumble! Get ready!
This team isn't really going to force Broly or any of the Wolves team to play particularly differently, especially with the strong advantage that Cell and actually the entire team has against Goku. Therefore, the main thing would have to be play good enough defense that one does not end up being too close or taking too much damage. And therefore, from Metacon side, the most important thing is opening up the opponent really well. Once that's done, the rest is just a matter of execution. And not having timing issues of its own in terms of tactics. From the Wolf side, therefore, the best bet would probably be to stay in the air more, similar to how Cell is normally doing it, to force super dash damage to be the main way that he takes damage, minimizing things, while still letting him set up particular spaces. The assists on Metacon side are far less dangerous at that range and timing than the assists on the Wolf side. making it easier to set up situations where you get things like the Dragon Rush, or get to outmaneuver the opponent as a whole. It's also easier to get good switches to help people heal. And between Cell and Brawly, you can probably keep this up for a while. When things get rough, eventually you'll just have to use Sparking, but for now, you can probably keep going. But unfortunately, I must admit that I still really can't say anything about this team. It more or less seems to come down to, can I open up my opponent or not? So, players in the team with weaker defense are likely to lose, and those with better defense are likely to win, and that's probably about all I can say for the time being. I can, however, plug our defense bot. You can find it at 2-mk.org/DBFZ bots. Currently, all our bots are at the same place, and it's more or less just a matter of understanding how to set up the thing. Once you've input it once, you've got all the bots at once, at least for the current batch. Accuracy 3 might involve some very minor changes to something. But other than that, you should be good to go once you've done the inputs at least once, and they're relatively easy to do. Not super easy, but if you play this game as a generality, you probably can manage. If you're a complete beginner who doesn't play the game and wants to start with them, it may take you a little longer, but if you're familiar with fighting games, you should be able to get the timing out. We're back around to the match we should have had before. We technically had it before, but one of our players was playing with a slight handicap in play. As we were saying before, this basically comes down to playing neutral using assists very carefully from Kanzuki Dynasty's side, and using armor and good approaches along with super dash stuff from the Wolf side. A lot of their character face-offs are decently good without any seriously lopsided advantages. We've had some discussion about this before, so anything you heard mentioned before you can reference instead. But for now we're just going to watch this one.
ビッグバン点数をつけるとすれば30点を取る。ビッグバン目玉点数をつけるとすれば点数をつけるとすればそこだ。いくぞ。だな。問題ない。下まで。目玉だ。笑わせんな。目玉だ。そこだ。地球ごと消えてな。来た。お前の思い通りにはさせる。そこだろ。油断してたぜ。どうした。行くぞ。殲滅する。叫んじゃねえぞ。甘いな。終わりだ。そこだな。行くぞ。こっちだ。
A fierce showdown is about to begin!
まずお前から血祭りにあげてやる。
初めから全力でかかってくるんだな。
Are you ready? Let's go!
After much observation, we can specifically say that we have a much clearer understanding now than we were struggling early in the year of what blue health is and how it's caused. Without going into too much detail, we'll probably cover that as the stream gets more and more advanced. The thing to understand is this. Certain moves start combos that are all blue damage. No matter what you do after this move has started the combo, the rest will be blue health. You can't be absolutely sure because some of the damage is very small, but lots of observation has put us to the point where we don't really think too hard about it. You should just assume that enough of it will be automatically blue health, that you don't have to think about it. The most important things that do not do this, and therefore you can count on for decent amounts of large damage. Is things that don't involve super dashes. There does appear to be some interaction between hitting with say 2H or 5H and then going into the super dash from there. But this may be more so connected to whether or not you use a smash early into it to get extra damage. It seems like a decent design decision, as it basically means that beginner tactics tend to lead to recoverable health, and more specific tactics don't. Counter hits do not seem to have this blue health rating problem, except if they are super dashes. A counter hitting super dash still seems to do the same thing. And most basic key blast beams, at least somewhat, seem to have the same property. Or it might just be that they do so little damage that blue health that already exists doesn't really get seen as moving. Either way, you can add it to your understanding of the game as a whole. Level 3s and raw level 3s, blue health damage. Combos that start with super dash, more blue health damage. Combos that start with beams involve smashes or certain vanish timings. Blue health damage. Hitting a person in neutral with a counter hit of basically any type tends to lead to mostly real damage. And we're still working out exactly how this works for the smash attacks and similar, whether or not it is if you 2H does normal damage and everything else is blue, or what. But most of this doesn't matter, because the main thing you need to understand is don't expect a lot off your super dash combos. It could also be a difference between auto combos into Smash and manual combos into Smash off of the super dash stuff, but it's not as clear. Above all else, understand that if you do things that start with mediums that hit your opponent, especially counter hit them, or heavies, and you don't stretch it out too long, finish those with meter for max damage and less recoverable health. And if you manage to get your opponent with a super dash, or a beam, use that for a setup rather than using your meter, because most likely, especially if you manage to go on long and do all this extra assist stuff, you're just piling on recoverable health, and unless you're going to defeat your opponent, it's not going to benefit you in the end.
A fierce showdown is about to begin.
Once again, if you're fully interested, go look it up somewhere, because there's probably somewhere deep on the internet where we still have not found where someone explains this in full detail, probably translated from Japanese. But as beginners, the things I mentioned are probably enough for you to count on. But we are seeing Yamcha. Yamcha got changes to his conversions, more or less. This untech time increases, and all Wolf Fang hits are easier to combo airborne opponents. In short, straight up quality of life changes, and not a lot to worry about. For our fused Zamasu, he has a little extra movement speed on his 5M, some of the extra follow-ups, and that's about it. He's mostly set as he is now. And as you'd expect, Vegito doesn't have a whole lot of changes either, except that now, for whatever reason, his jump 2H is jump cancelable again. Well, again? I'm not sure it was before, but the idea is that you can now jump cancel this move, which is really quite good for him, but it mostly just extends his combos. And the minimum damage on one of his supers has been increased. If you knew what you were doing with him, he was a good character before though, so it's not as if it matters to you. One probably less understood / expected effect of Rowley's additional armor is that one is more likely to hesitate about trying to hit buttons when he's close to you, and therefore this makes him slightly more likely at the beginner level to get his command grabs off. However, beware of thinking of this as a straight buff, as this is mostly a more opponent confidence thing, and stronger or more confident or even just crazier opponents will disregard this effect of his armor buff and force you to actually try to use the armor.
からが本番だぜ。
そろそろさて
逃がすか。はいや。
私
どこへ行くや。行くぞ。なめるなよ。はいとはいシェアはいはいや。逃がすか。ヤムチャ様をあんまりなめるんじゃないぜ。
ヤムチャ win。
これが俺の真の力だ。なんてかっこつけすぎかな。
A fierce showdown is about to begin. Ready?
One semi-obvious extension of this system is the ability to understand that if you are playing defensively while at medium health, you do not necessarily have to worry that much about death unless your opponent has a lot of meter. Because look at all that. It's just all blue.
点数をつけるとすれば30点だ。目玉そこだ。
But there's the setup leading into the Dragon Rush, leading into actual damage. Because it doesn't help to add scaling on top of all that.
子に乗るぜ。無駄だ。家がいた。ここを見ている。点数をつけるとすれば。ビッグバンが当たった。よし。目玉だ。ほら、来たな。そこだ。ファイナルスプラッシュ。そこだ。無駄だ。そこだ。ほら、来たな。そこだ。
Note that, for example, was probably more so to force the sparking. And since you knew they were going to recover all of it anyway, might as well use level 3. And in this case, Super Dash bought work. So, sparking activating the other side is probably the only way this is going to work out well. That is probably the ultimate fake out. So with Quillen's sparking still lower, and Bardock not exactly the easiest character to get in on, this is going to come down to the matter of skill conversion. Oh, but a little low on the block, and therefore...
Showdown is about to begin!
Yamcha has myriad problems with Kid Buu, so we don't expect to see that matchup starting it off, but he is good at breaking through defense for players who are not as calm or confident, so it might be worth the risk at first. Well, leave it to Vegito. Much better at handling this character. Vegito is fairly sticky, meaning that Bardock doesn't get to use a lot of his stronger methodologies. Zamasu is a little bit easier for Bardock to handle, but only a little bit. His playstyle makes him hard to hurt beyond the same recoverable health, and he converts better than most people against Bardock. I have a little more trouble with Kid Buu and Vegeta Blue, so that seems like the more likely option. Vegeta can keep him off fairly well with Big Bang Attack when he wants to keep him off for some reason. And yeah, I'm just suffering similar fates if needed. Looks like Bardock is taking his turn here though. Mostly blue health. Quite a lot of it.
子に乗るな。ここを見ていろ。いいそこだ。宇宙の地で見せてやる。そこだ。そこだ。調子に乗るな。これに指図するな。出てきやがれ。なめんじゃねえ。捕らえられる。
The player can handle and control the pace of a match by knowing the matchups well enough. Basically, whenever the opponent gets low on health and you know they're going to get away and switch in the next character, just immediately switch to the character that beats that character. They can't necessarily afford to keep in the one they want, so the situation shifts for them.
我は孫悟空と一つになることで人間の罪と神々の失敗をこの身に引き受けたのだ。合体し私の助力をしようなど神になったつもりか。愚かしい。
Brace yourself for the coming battle!
Given the usual duration of our stream and of Dragon Ball FighterZ matches, this is the second to last match on stream.
Get ready! Fight it out! れ以上好きにさせんぞ。お前はもう終わりだ。完全に切り裂いてしまえ。
僕も加勢します。
邪魔だ、どけ。行くぞ。甘い。この攻撃はここを見ている。
そんなもんかよ。修行の成果を見せてる。甘いね。修行の成果を見せてる。
俺様一人いれば十分だ。
ビッグバンそこだ。そこだ。
参った全力でいくぞ。うい
そこだ。
麻酔機
そこだ。
I feel like this was another weird loss to impatience, on both sides actually.
戦いの感が鈍ってるな。大丈夫。僕はもう子供じゃありませんから。
Get ready for a Dragon Ball Rumble!
Ah, there we go. Perfect ending both stage and music. This really all blue damage? No, not all of it. A lot though. A reminder that generally we suggest that if you are in the air and don't know where your opponent is and want to reach them quickly, you use your Vanish instead of your Super Dash to do so. While the Super Dash response is a bit difficult, many characters can manage to basically, as soon as their character becomes visible on screen, if they happen to be on the ground at that time, hit 2H. And some characters, if they are visible on screen but aren't on the ground yet, can still hit 2H. Meaning that generally, they're just watching for their own character to reappear and hitting 2H. Either way, this is, as mentioned, the last match on stream. Join us tomorrow for Dead or Alive Last Round Lounge. And on Monday for our Street Fighter V Mishmashing Battle Lounge. Dead or Alive is loser stays on as with this, but Street Fighter is a winner stays on lounge. It lasts for 1 hour less, but all start at the same time. DOA often also lasts for 1 hour less. On Tuesday, the Tuesday Train. Guilty Gear Zard Rev 2. Another loser stays on US East Coast lobby. PS4 of course. And next Wednesday we're back with Sandbag Casuals once again. Whether or not it's going to be the XL or standard Street Fighter V Sandbag Casuals is, as usual, not decided yet. But of course this would bring us right back to another Kame house. At that time we'll probably know a little bit more about what the community in general thinks of all the changes. They seem to be really upset so far, but those have a lot more to do with the universal changes than most changes to characters. So even if it's reverted, it's likely to be really simple reversions. You'll see what happens in the coming week. That said, however, this stream is over. This has been Rillian for Team 2MK. Good luck with your training. Good night, everyone.